Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, January 17th, 2013. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, experimenting with specialty grains. Homebrewer Darnell Bronner joins us to share his experiment comparing the same recipe brewed with 3 different grains. If you're new to home brewing or would like to get into the hobby for the first time, check out our website, basicbrewing.com, where you can find archives of our audio and video podcasts and our DVDs to walk you through basic and more advanced brewing techniques. You can follow me on Twitter. My username is Basic Brewing, all one word. Also, you can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/basicbrewing.james, and our show page on Facebook is at facebook.com/basicbrewing. Thanks to everybody clicking on the Amazon.com associate link on our basicbrewing.com site. Whenever you think of Amazon, think of us first. And go to our website, click on our associate link, the Amazon logo on our website. That will take you to Amazon.com. Then, whatever you purchase during that session, we'll get a hunk of monetarily. It won't cost you any extra. That's the great thing. And you'll be helping us to bring you the show, and we greatly appreciate your support with that. We also have associate links for Brew Your Own magazine and the American Homebrewers Association on our site, too, that work in a similar fashion. You can find our Basic Brewing iPhone app on iTunes and our Android app on Amazon.com. We're on the BlackBerry Podcast Directory, and we're on the Stitcher app as well. Well, here's where I put the weekly plug for our newly designed Brewer's Logbook. Even if you use an app of some sort to plan your brews, a logbook is great to have by the brewpot to keep track of any modifications in your recipe or to make any notes on your process. And the calendar in front is wonderful for giving you a quick glance at what you've been brewing and to help you plan brewing activities. And you can keep track of up to 50 batches of beer and use the table of contents on the inside cover to find them quickly. A couple of handy tips before we head into the interview. Andrew from Clearwater, Florida has this tip. Andrew says, I've been using Star Sand for quite a while. I found the best way to use it sparingly is to keep some mixed up in a clear spray bottle. However, I keep a lot of things the same way. For example, bleach, vinegar for barbecue, CLR, mineral remover for showers and sinks. They are all the same color. Imagine the disasters if I grab the wrong container to sanitize my carboy. So Andrew says I add 2 drops of red food coloring to my Star Sand bottle. It's plenty to change to a nice maraschino color, but not enough to have any result in the beer. If you're suspicious of this, just mix as I suggest and start spraying into a 5-gallon carboy or bucket of clear water. You'll have to add most of the spray bottle to make a noticeable change of the color. Andrew says, I have this idea filed under an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Well, Andrew was one of the participants in our annual Brewing Disasters show, and Andrew's story won him a Brew Holler shirt, by the way. Thanks again to the Brew Holler folks for donating the great prizes for that show. Brandon from Greenville, South Carolina writes with this. I was just listening to your podcast on hops. That's our interview with Stan Hieronymus after writing his book For the Love of Hops, by the way. Anyway, Brendan says he mentioned bulk packages and trying to reuse them after opening. What if I were to open it and vacuum seal by the ounce all the hops? My wife bought me 2 pounds of hops, and I vacuum sealed them by the ounce, every single bit of that. And they all taste fresh, and at least it seems like it tastes fresh. Thoughts? I sent Brandon's note to Stan Hieronymus, who was on the episode last week, as I said. And Stan said, yep, I think that's the way to go. Then put them in the freezer, and I know it's a pain, but the better job you do of documenting what was acquired when, the easier it is to use hops before they get too old. That's great advice. It works well for homegrown hops as well. If you write on the bags after you vacuum seal them, the date and the variety of hops before you put them in the freezer, then you can really keep track of what you got. Good advice. Okay, let's get into the meat of the matter. Darnell Bronner has been playing with specialty grains. Darnell Bronner, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Thank you, James.
Last time we talked, you were talking about your experiment of preheating grains before the mash, which was an interesting conversation. Have you done anything else on that since then?
No. Like I said, that's just a little tip. Since I switched to brew in the bag, so I can basically directly heat my mash. I don't need to worry about hitting those target strike temperatures as much because I can always just add heat to it. Preheating your grains is more of when you're doing a cooler sparge, and instead of adding all that extra water, having the extra gallon of boiling water, you can get your grains as close to your strike temperature. So when you add them, you're only a few degrees off.
So brew in a bag solves everything essentially.
It is one part that part does solve it. Or directing heat, or being able to add heat directly to your mash tun, will solve that problem.
I'm just trying to see if I can irritate people who have RIM systems or.
Like I said, I'm upgrading into the near future to a 3-vessel Brutus with a Herm system. Just finally biting the bullet and going with it. But I still am a firm believer that you can produce good beers, because I have, through Brew in the Bag, and that if you're someone who is even considering the idea of trying all grain, Brew in the Bag is exactly what you should try first, because it is a $6 investment in one nylon bag, and you can kind of just sort of test the waters.
There you go.
And, it's literally $6 to see if going all grain might be for you, or just giving it a try. So you're going to spend just as much money, if not more, on the Smack Pack.
And I still use my mash tun. So even though I do brew in a bag batches, I still do the sort of older fashioned way. So every technique is great if it makes good beer.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about this experiment. Now that we've gone down that bunny trail, let's talk about this experiment. What were you looking at, and what were you trying to explore?
Well, I've been a homebrewer for about 3 years now. And so for the first 2 years or so, I would say I was a telescopic road, where I would think about big pictures, chocolate stout, what kind of chocolate stout do I want it to taste like? I want to do like a bitter dark chocolate, where the bitter comes from the bitter chocolate and not from the roast, or like a strawberry beer. And, just sort of, it's the really high level conceptual pieces. But then the problem that comes into play is, if you think about, I want to build this beautiful structure, right? So it's this perfect beer that you have in your mind. Well, if you don't know the building blocks intimately and how they put together, it's very hard to achieve your end goal. And so basically, so it's my 3rd year, and so I'm switching the lens, and I want to do microscopic. Like, I want to really get to know my ingredients. And the only way, to me, you can truly get to know your ingredients is to focus just on one. Just have one ingredient. And so that's what this is. This experiment, and I have a lot of others in the pipeline, where I'm going to say, okay, what does just this one thing taste like? Okay, and then I know it. I store it in my mind, and so then when I want to build flavors, then I have all those building blocks to put it together, because I can say, this tastes like this tastes like that, put it together in my mind. Okay, this has this mouthfeel, and that sort of thing. Because, a lot of times I know a lot of homebrewers, they'll make a recipe and it's got like 5-6 different grains or different ingredients and stuff. And, I could ask someone, what does that taste like? And they'll say, well, it tastes like this. And it's like, did you just read that off the label? What does that flavor mean to you? Because from this experiment, I learned that I don't like a particular crystal malt. I just don't like it. And then other ones, I could say, that would go really good in like an IPA or maybe a hoppier pale ale. But this other one would go really good in like an English extra special bitter.
Or nowadays, you get recipe books that have other people's tried and true recipes and they may have a list of ingredients that you haven't had experience with yourself, and you just go to the homebrew store and put them all in the bag and mill them, and there you go. Or you look at a software program and you say, oh, the color's a little off, I'll add a little bit of this. And if you haven't had experience with that individual ingredient specifically, do you
it's
really
a shot in the dark?
Yeah, do you really know what you're dealing with?
Yeah, because another person's recipe, they could say this is the best beer ever brewed, but they're tasting with their palate. It's just like someone telling you, "Oh, this movie's great," and I'm sure, like a lot of people, they'll ask a friend and they'll say the movie's great, and you go to see it and they think that movie sucked, or vice versa. So it's really getting to know everything from your own personal experience and preference.
And I'm not saying that, like for instance, Gordon Strong's book, his recipes are some of them are fairly complex. You know that Gordon has done the research. You know that Gordon knows those ingredients, and so you can feel comfortable in using that recipe. But I think if you're just following the instructions, you're sort of cheating yourself because then you're stuck to just following other people's instructions. And I think part of the wonderful thing about home brewing is playing with ingredients yourself and kind of coming up with your own thing. So I like this experiment in that it is comparing, in this case, specialty grains against each other to see exactly what impact those had. And so, talk about how you designed the process.
Well, I said when you're doing an experiment, any science person will tell you that your method of doing the experiment is actually more important than what you're testing for, because you want to have it to be repeatable. You want to have it to be, I would say, real world or legitimate. But basically, I followed a bit of brewing knowledge from that I heard on your show about the 15-minute pale ale, and how if you're doing a partial mash or extract beer, you don't need to boil it for an hour, because a lot of times I can taste if a beer is an extract beer, and I think that's because it's simply been boiled too long, because it was already boiled all the way down to a syrup or a powder, and then it's boiled for another hour. And even the guides to say, well, only add half your syrup in the beginning so your hops can summarize. I think that might be a mistake. I think that the 15-minute method, from the results that I got, just add more. If you need more bittering, add some more, and you'll get more flavor and more aroma in the finish. But basically, the whole experiment is 1 pound of dry malt extract, 1 quarter pound of a specialty grain, and 8 ounces of Northern Brewer hops. And so the idea is that we add the water. All the water was the same water chemistry. We went to the store and bought, like I said, Walmart.
Now you said, let me stop you. You said 8 ounces.
Excuse me, 8 grams.
Okay.
Sorry. That'd be a lot for a 1 gallon batch.
Yeah, thank goodness I'm not the only one who confuses units of measurement. Yeah, 8 grams. And what was the volume of the boil?
1 gallon of water.
Okay, all right. So 8 grams.
It's basically a 6-pack batch.
Right. So 1 pound, 8 grams of hops, a quarter pound of specialty grains. And how did you steep the grains?
Yeah. We and like I said, we use distilled water and then add our own chemicals, and then we steep the grains. And I picked a quarter pound because most of the specialty grains, if you on the websites, they'll say don't use more than 20% of by weight. So the idea is, okay, it's 1/4 of the weight of the DME, and that's where I got to that, and that's where I figured it'd have a lot of flavor. But yeah, we steeped the grains for I think approximately 15 minutes. And I think it was like 150 degrees or something, and 160 degrees. I don't remember what it was. It was actually the first time I've ever done a partial mash beer. I've only done all grain. When I started brewing, I literally just jumped headfirst into all grain. So it was actually very interesting and so much easier. But I did the partial mash because the level of control.
And I know that there are people out there whose eyebrows are going up, and they're going to their keyboards right now, but you don't have to do it, because we know that when Darnell says partial mash, he knows that he's not really mashing those specialty grains. They're just steeping, just making a tea. There's no conversion taking place.
Correct.
But just wanted to jump out there ahead of
Is that the appropriate term when you steep grains in just sort of water and add your liquid malt or dry malt extract?
I think that some people call steeping, with specialty grains and then using extract. I think that some people do call that partial mashing, but technically, you're not really mashing, because you're not using base malts, so there's no conversion taking place. You know what I mean? You're just steeping those specialty grains just to get this tea out of it.
So it would be technically an extract.
Yeah, just extract with steeping grains is how I refer to it. Now I could be completely wrong, and please let me know if I am. But those people out there who are helpful enough to email when I am wrong, and they're busy. But anyway, just wanted to kind of make that. Maybe it's me that's just being hypercritical. But anyway, so you steeped for about 15 minutes,
and then heated it up to about, I think, 170, and then dunked it to just sort of rinse it, and then set it aside. And we did not squeeze the grain back.
And I haven't done any research on whether that's a valid point or not, but that's on my list of things. Whether squeezing the bag actually does give you more astringencies. But
another experiment for another day.
That's right.
I can only think that when they talked about vorlofting and how the rice hulls absorb the lipids and the amino acids or something, they're basically like filters for that a few compounds. Is it maybe if you squeeze it, that you squeeze some of those compounds out, but I don't know.
I've squeezed every brew in a bag.
Oh, I did too.
So, but that is kind of a different thing, because it's the base malts all are in there too. So I don't know whether just squeezing, say, a bag of, say, Black Patent, I could see where that might cause some problems. Anyway, another bunny trail. I'm just off on the. I'm having trouble sticking to the subject. So anyway, we boil for 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm. And we add the hops. Was it right at maybe slightly before boil, but very close? I mean, since it's such a small volume, it boils pretty quickly.
Right.
I made sure to, once it came to a boil, so boil at not too rapid, because a 2-gallon pot on a propane burner, that's a lot of heat for a very small pot. So we made sure to turn them down very low to simulate what a 5-gallon batch would boil at.
Right. Right.
So we add the 8 grams of Northern Brewer. I think that the calculated IBUs were something like 25 to 30, something around there.
Okay. And then what were now? There were lots of considerations. We wound up with testing 3 bottles side by side. Steve and I tested 3 of the samples side by side, and that to me is a perfect number of samples to test, because I think if you get many more than that, you start to get palate fatigue. And there's some confusion going back and forth. So I think 3 was a perfect number for this experiment. But we tested 3 bottles side by side. And what are the specialty malts that we were looking at?
One was Karastan, one was Crystal 40, and one was Crystal 60.
Okay. And what is?
Just followed a gradient.
What is Karastan?
Karastan is, I think it's something like a Crystal, maybe 35. It's made by, I have to Google the vendor for Karastan.
Yeah, I think whenever you see the prefix Cara, that is going to be a sort of a crystal malt.
Yeah, yeah. It's just some they call it crystal, some call it caramel, some let's see, it's a British crystal. It's 30L, a Great Western. That's who produces it.
Okay.
They produce a Karastan, and which I thought the name was funny because it made me think of like Borat. It's like we're from Karastan. But they also produce a Karastan Light that we actually did test that one as well. But that jug had a blow-off tube versus an airlock, and when I did a cold crash, it actually siphoned all the 2 cups of water from the blow-off tube container back into it.
Oops.
So yeah, that batch got dumped.
Every time someone mentions Borat, I think of the guy at the cheese thing. And what is this? Oh, that's cheese. And what is this? That's cheese. And what is this? That's cheese. Okay. So anyway, yeah, what yeast did you use?
I used, I think, what was it called? It's West Coast. Shoot. Actually, let me bring up my Beer Smith experiment. But it's basically a dry version of Pac-Man. I think of the name of it. But it was dry yeast, because I think with any of these experiments, you have to use dry yeast.
Right.
Because you'll never get your cell count the same. It was, I think, 2 or 3 grams of dry yeast per batch that went into each jug. But yeah, it was one of those called like West Coast or something like that. I'd never actually used before. I was going to use a USO5, but I ended up using this one. I was actually very happy with the results. But I think it's, like I said, the dry version of Pac-Man. Actually, I can find out. I forget the name off the top of my head. But the idea was to use a fairly clean yeast, something that would ferment clean, that was dry, so I could get the exact or very close cell counts. And I made sure to use, one of those really precise drug scales when I measured out anything, even the hops, because I was working with very small numbers.
Right.
But something that would basically showcase the malt. It wouldn't add a lot of funky flavors. I wouldn't use a Belgian because you're going to hide the malt flavor.
Right.
All the Belgian phenolics.
So is there anything else that we need to talk about going into the tasting?
No, like I said, they were all just sort of fermented. Like I said, the bricks for each one was really close. They fermented pretty close. Tasting them, I mean, I can give my sort of, like I said, what I learned from it was actually, really a good experience because I taste them very young, and when you taste them young, you get a lot of those malt flavors. And like I said, I don't like Crystal 60. I tasted it, and I was just like, this tastes like it's something he wants to be kind of like caramel, like a burnt, like it tastes like to me like a fake burnt caramel slightly. And I really like Crystal 40, and I really saw some potential uses for the Karastan. And then on top of that, I had a friend over when we were doing a tasting. We thought, well, let's build a beer, and that's something I'll probably do in the future. Where I took a syringe and basically, measured out like 30 cc's of 60 and 30 cc's of cc's of 40. And then like 20 cc's of Karastan, and then injected that into a glass and sort of said, how does these tasting? So I think in the future I might do an experiment where I see a result like that versus, let's say I did the by weight. So I added 30% by weight of Crystal 60, 30% by weight of Crystal or something like that, right? Or 50-50. Made the same beer, when would the end results be the same? So you can kind of like, real time build a beer, get an idea. And that was the whole idea, was tasting just that one ingredient. Because the DME I use I think extra light DME. And so the idea was just not going to really, that was just going to be in the background.
Well, let's before we get too much into the results. Let's go to the tasting that Steve and I did. We were the other day. We were shooting an episode of Basic Brewing Video, and beforehand we decided to do this tasting before our palates got corrupted. And here's how that went. Okay, Steve Wilkes, welcome to the kitchen.
It's always a pleasure to be in your kitchen.
We got 3 beers here.
Indeed.
And they are very. We're just looking at them now. We haven't even smelled them or anything, but we are. They are fairly similar in color, and we've taken a white piece of paper and put behind them to help us kind of look at the color differentiation. And while I'm looking, why don't you talk about what you have seen?
It appears to me that, well, we have 3 beers. They're labeled A, B, and 3 for some unknown reason. No, A, B, and C. And the beer labeled A appears to be the lightest in color, while the beer labeled C appears to be the darkest in color. But believe me, I am splitting hairs. These are so close together. It's not like the difference between a pale ale and a porter. It's a difference between a relatively pale ale, color-wise, and a slightly relatively darker pale ale, color-wise. I don't know what the name of the color scale is. I can't remember. But these beers are all kind of maybe coppery. Is that a good? Yeah, kind of a copper color. To me, they look a little bit like a Sierra Nevada in the glass. I might be a little off on that, but that's what they kind of remind me of visually.
Maybe a little darker, maybe.
Maybe slightly darker. Yeah.
Now, take a look at it. Put the paper in there again.
Okay.
I don't want to influence you, but I'm looking. To me, B seems to be the lightest. A is just a teeny bit darker. And then C is the darker still. But man, the difference between A and B is really, really close.
Yeah, I could go with you on that. But on the other hand, it depends where I'm looking at them from. Mm-hmm. If I move my eye or my head, say, slightly to the left or the right, this is how close it is. Mm-hmm. That the refraction of the light seems to make some difference to me. Having said that, so A and B, I could argue it either way. My eyes see that A is a little lighter, but I can certainly get where you're seeing it. I think the most important difference is that C is darker.
Yeah, we're both on board with that. And we don't have full pint pours. So
and why is that, by the way?
Because we only have 3 bottles. There are 2 of us. So now I guess we go on to smelling and tasting.
Well, I'm smelly.
Oh, as I break the glass on the countertop. And these are fairly cold.
Yeah, I'd say none of them are particularly fragrant. A seems to have the most bouquet at the moment to me, but like you say, they're a little cold and they'll probably open up some. I don't think that any of these are, kind of dry hop bombs.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
And I'll edit out the awkward pauses.
That's usually the most interesting part of the interview. I jest.
The contemplative. And these are the first beers of the day, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't smell any off flavors. There's no, diacetyl or anything like that coming off of it.
A is the most fragrant beer. I don't get a lot of hop aroma from it. I really get a malt aroma from it. You can edit out the ums. I get the most fragrance, the most bouquet from A, and I don't really get any from B or C. So I'm going to let them warm just a bit more.
Yeah, I think to me it's, let's see. C smells pretty malty to me. refrigerator goes off.
Okay. As they've warmed just even in the last minute or so, they've all three begun to put off some aroma. So, nonetheless, A is still the most prominent for me.
But they're not, again, they're very close between the three.
The other visual thing that I'd say is that as I've kind of swirled these around in the glass, C has a really smooth, very fine bubble head. And the other two, the bubbles are really large. They all have pretty good head retention, I think. But just the character of the head is a little bit different in each one of these beers. And I think that's probably a specialty grain thing.
Yeah, I think maybe C has a little better head retention, it looks like, than A or B.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, the tasting.
It's pretty darn good.
That's a tasty beer.
Yeah, it is. That's really good. It's not hoppy.
No.
It's all about the malt.
It's malty, but well balanced.
Mm-hmm. That's what they say about me.
That's tasty. That's a tasty beer.
But you know what? It's got that nice, it's kind of an English beer. It has that kind of nice, earthy hop thing at the end of it rather than a big American bomb at the nose of it.
Right. Yeah, it's in balance. Very nice.
Same for B. Very nice.
Mm-hmm. Now there's a kind of a, I don't know if I want to say metallic. Of course, I'm going to put thoughts in your head. You get a little teeny tiny bit of a copper kind of a thing.
I'm getting a little Metallica.
Which album?
No, I don't really. Just I'll probably
maybe that's just in my head.
Well, everybody's palate's a little different, so the only thing I was going to say it might be just a tad, and I mean a tiny bit more astringent. So that might be the flavor I'm picking up as astringency, and you're calling a kind of metallic flavor. I don't know, but
and the mouthfeel in B is a little bit lighter than A, in my opinion. Just a teeny bit.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, now on to C.
C is again the most different of the three beers to me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what the difference is at the moment, but the first two beers really splitting hairs. It's almost like, boy, that's the same beer. But C is a different beer. I think it's a little creamier, and that also might be part of the discussion I had with the head, that the head was a little creamier as well. So I don't know if that's because perhaps the bubbles, the carbonation is a little finer in it. It almost has that same mouthfeel like a Guinness would have with the nitrogen.
Yeah. It is chewier, not by leaps and bounds, and I'm not sure that if. Well, I don't know. It is. I'd say it's significantly chewier than the first two. C is significantly chewier than the first A or B.
Oh yeah, definitely. I do too. The first two beers. Okay, C is clean. So my descriptor here, don't take it the wrong way. By clean, I mean the first two beers have a really clean finish in your mouth. It's almost, and maybe that's that little bit of astringency that's kind of poking its little nose up. C seems to have a chewier, more luscious mouthfeel than the other two beers.
The flavor is pretty similar between the three, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the flavor is very similar. Again, though, 3 just kind of stands out. And I'm not saying that it's a better beer. I think all 3 beers are quite nice. Probably my favorite is A or C, and then B coming in second to those two. But B is a nice beer, too. I'd be proud to brew that beer.
Yeah. And I'm sticking with B being the lighter mouthfeel. But it's not a defect.
No.
I mean, it would be a nice session beer.
Yeah.
I get the feeling that these don't have a lot of alcohol. Maybe do you get any kind of a, these aren't, certainly aren't high gravity beers.
No, they're not, although I'm getting a tiny little buzz.
It's because we hadn't eaten lunch yet.
Like...
We got chicken wings we got to eat before you start
Sure.
on the video podcast.
I love that story. Yeah, I don't think that these are terribly strong. They're probably 5 or 6% beers, maybe. I think they're about 5%.
Yeah.
Must be dead wrong. Must be nine or something.
Yeah. Get up.
But yeah, it's not. They're nothing like drinking, like that big Belgian that we're making today, or
That's right.
A Chimay or something like that, or a big barley wine. They're not like that. So. Well, those are right good.
Yeah. I wasn't going to drink all three, but
I'm gonna.
I'm working my way to the bottom. I'm working my way to the bottom. Very nice. All three beers are well made. I can't pick out any defects, which is always a large relief when we get beers from.
Try this.
Yeah. It's familiar.
Yeah, these are just kind of really nice examples of nice, well-made pale ales. I can't even tell. I can't tell if it's an extract or a all-grain beer. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can kind of tell, but I can't with these. And they're not terribly hoppy, but they are well balanced. And I get the hops at the end of the drink rather than at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, good job.
Yeah, I'm going to lean towards C, just because. Right now, at this point in the day or whatever, that mouthfeel, that kind of creamy mouthfeel, appeals to me. Now, watch, we'll be just dead wrong on it.
Well, the other thing, though, is I'm not even sure what we're testing for. I'm just giving you my impressions of the beer.
That's right. I told you it was something about specialty malts.
That's right. And that's all I know is that there's some differences. I'm assuming that there's a different specialty malt in each one of these. Mm-hmm. And then I'm also making the assumption that it's the same base beer and hop schedule, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very interesting because they are different. They're definitely different beers. And I don't have such a golden palate that I can tell you exactly what the difference is between A and B, except I agree with you that the mouthfeel in B is the lightest of the three. But they're all well made, and it does point to why it makes sense to pay attention to your specialty grains. Because I don't know if how you are or how our listeners are, but I'm kind of open with what I get. So in other words, I go into the brew store and I've got in mind I'm going to make a pale ale, and I'll buy my 5-gallon batch or a 20-liter batch. I'll buy my 10 pounds of Maris Otter or whatever, and then it's like, let's try some 40 Lovibond this week, or some 60 this week, or whatever. And that's great. That's how I like to brew, and you get a little difference with it. But if you're brewing for consistency and you're brewing for competition, it makes a lot of difference in what you choose. Yeah. And if I was wanting to hit that creamy mouthfeel thing, then whatever the specialty grain in C would be good to know what that is, because it's definitely different.
Yeah. Well, very good. Thanks for your time, Steve.
Well, thank you, James.
So, Darnell, how did we do?
I was very happy with the results. I was, like I said, it was great because one, it was mentioned that no flaws were detected, which means that I did what I was supposed to do. And then Steve, like I said, he has a very good palate. He picked up on the noble hops. He just, I think, it seemed like everything was following. The fact that there wasn't a lot of difference between Karastan and there was maybe at most 10 degrees of whatever darkness between the two, and so the color,
So which was
right.
which? Which was which?
Oh, sorry. C. Hold on. Let me bring up my little diagram. Made my notes.
C was our favorite.
Yeah, C was actually Crystal 60.
Yeah.
So my least favorite was y'all's favorite. It just shows, different palate.
Yeah.
A was Crystal 40, and B was Karastan.
So what is the Lovabond number of Karastan again?
Some websites will say 30, some will say a little more. Because when a website gives you, all maltsters, they're within a few degrees, you're going to have a little room. I would say between 30 and 35.
So A should have been lighter.
No. A should have been darker.
Oh, okay, okay.
A was Crystal 40.
Okay, all right.
I had to change the lettering because I didn't want to, A, B, C. If I followed it like that, might give you a cue.
Well, so my eyes are a little sharper than Steve's because I picked the middle one to be a little lighter. But Steve picked up on the noble hops. Not that it's a competition. So I thought it was a really fun experiment. Number one, all three beers, we liked all three beers. Now, I'm trying to remember, did we say that B was a little lighter on the palate than A?
I think so. I'm trying to think. I know you said both of them, like A and B, were fairly light, or are you referred to as clean?
Right.
And then C was, like I said, was a little chewier. I think the word was used.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've noticed that, like I said, as they age, the flavors get a little more mellow. Like I said, is tasting them really young, I think it showcased the difference a little more. So you're tasting a slightly older version, and so it was a little hard to pick up on them. But I would definitely, to me, Karastan, when I tasted, for me, was the lighter flavor, cleaner flavor.
Yeah.
But definitely, like I said, I mean, it follows the whole, the darkness of the roast and stuff like that.
And another thing I think we mentioned in the tasting, we couldn't tell whether this was an extract beer or an all-grain beer, and we certainly couldn't tell whether it was a big batch or a small batch. So, this is hats off to Extract Brewing, the late or the 15-minute boil method, and to small batch brewing, because these were all three very tasty beers. I mean, these were very quaffable beers that would be, wonderful just to drink.
And they were the simplest of extract beers. I mean, really, you don't get much simpler than like one hop with one addition, one specialty grain, and one. It's not even it wasn't even a fancy syrup. It was just regular extra light DME.
Yeah.
And they were, like you said, very drinkable. And I was just like, wow, this is really good. And for extract brewers out there, honestly, I mean, 15 minutes, you're good to go.
Yeah. If you get your bitterness, if you get your bitterness calculated correctly, because you're only getting half of the hop utilization in that 15 minutes, according to the formulas. But yeah, those were tasty. And I get one thing that I meant to mention, pardon me, but I didn't, is that I have been lately, drinking big beers and flavorful, hoppy IPAs, and really, kind of not extreme, but they're fairly out there as far as the flavor components. And it was really nice to have a good, solid, just drinkable beer, with nice malty flavors, and to kind of get back to basics. So anyway,
yeah, I think that I'll probably brew I'll probably just do the Maris Otter 20% by weight, the Crystal 40, and then use. I've never actually used the Northern Brewer hop before, but from what I read, like I said, it is a dual-purpose hop, it's very noble. I think I might just make that version because, like I said, it was just a very, good sort of sipping beer.
Yeah. So what's next? I mean, I hope that you'll continue this sort of series of experiments. I
have probably more experiments than there are hours in the day. Because Well, when you have go through an idea, it's good to brainstorm. And so I went on this little Google Documents and started brainstorming experiments. So like I said, right now I'm involved with base malt experiments to where I want to really get to know, like, what's the difference between using a floor malted Pilsner or a Belgian Pilsner, or American Pilsner, is there, because they're grown in different regions. And obviously, every year is going to be different. But the idea is to kind of maybe get an idea for certain things. Because if you can't tell the difference, or to me, it's like, well, because from this experiment, it's not like one crystal malt is better than another. It's more of, this is what this crystal malt brings to your beer. So you think about what beers you want to introduce it to. Mm-hmm. And I think the same thing for that. I definitely want to test Gordon's, mash out specialty malt method that you had him on the show earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Because that sounded, because I've gotten into water adjustments and things, and I loved his explanation of how, why would I want to do something that basically puts a lot of stuff in my beer, to balance out this other stuff when, I just love that, because it simplifies things. It's like, okay, well, you get your workhorse base malts, and you do your mash, and then at the mash out, you add the specialty ones, and you never have to really worry about doing a lot of chemicals and offsetting the darker rows by adding acids or chalk or everything else. But saying that, when I presented these samples to my homebrew club in Bluffton, the Low Country Malts, one of the members mentioned, and he felt that the profile would be very different if these specialty malts were used in an all-grain batch. So let's say I did a pound, or maybe a little more than a pound, because of the extract, or DME is pure sugar, of, let's say, 2-row, and then a pound, or 3/4 of a pound of Crystal 60, because he felt that there would be some enzymatic behavior would go to work on the sugars, on the, the specialty grain. Mm-hmm. But technically, if Gordon does it his way, whereas he does it at mash out and he adds the specialty grains, well, you're mashed out. Your enzymes are denatured. So I'm curious to see the difference. Is it a situation where you're just tasting what, let's say, your base malt brings to the beer on top of what the crystal, or is there a chemical interaction between the two?
Yeah.
So it'll be, to me, it's going to be something interesting to look into.
Well, cool. Well, definitely keep us posted, and I am really interested in this kind of thing, and I'm hoping that it will inspire other homebrewers out there to do something similar.
Yeah, I think just getting to know, after you've done it for a while, and just say, hey, let me just see what happens if I just add one hop, just one hop, do this little special, little 15-minute 1-gallon batch, and say, okay, do I like this hop? I've done some stuff with Amarillo, for instance. Very tasty hop, but it's not one for solo, in my opinion. It needs another hop, like maybe a heavy C hop, to give it some backbone. But you're not going to fully understand that unless you just taste it by itself and just see what it brings to the table by itself.
There you go. Well, thanks, Darnell. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you, James.
Well, thanks again to Darnell and to Steve Wilkes, as usual. Those were all some tasty beers, and I'm looking forward to more experiments from Darnell. In the meantime, if you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com, and please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Be sure to check out our DVDs, Extract Brewing and Partial Mashing, Stepping into All Grain, Low-Tech Lagering and Decoction Mashing, and Introduction to Wine Kits. You can find them all on our site. We've got combo deals to save you a few bucks if you want to buy more than one DVD at a time, and you can check out our Basic Brewing shirts in the store, too. Our Brewers Logbooks are on the store, too, as I said in the beginning of the podcast. Keep track of up to 50 batches of beer, and it won't matter if you splash a little wort on the logbook. try that with a laptop by the Brewpod. You can see a listing of the fine folks across the country who sell our DVDs on basicbrewing.com. And if there isn't a vendor in your area, you can order them online in our online shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody who's continued to click on our Amazon.com link. We greatly appreciate the support there. Our featured products this week that were purchased through that link are Steve Martin, the television stuff, and Office Star WorkSmart Professional Dual Function Ergonomic High Back Eco Leather Chair. Black. I've only used my chair for one function. I guess I'm missing out. Thanks again, everybody, and for those clicking on the link. And remember, I can't tell who bought what, so no worries there. Just click on the Amazon.com logo on our site the next time you feel like Amazon shopping. We'd greatly appreciate your support. Don't forget, you can also join the American Homebrewers Association and subscribe to Brew Your Own magazine as well through our associate links on basicbrewing.com. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dotson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. So long.